So well designed, so compact, all within reach. So each key is connected to the pipe versus with trackers, thin wooden slots. The trackers are there. Oh, there are the trackers, like right here. And a system of levers to choose which chests will be opened so that the air can pass through. And then the link to the pallet, the opening of the air valve for each and every pipe. And it's interesting how this is the wooden pedal pipe, or maybe it's the great bourdon. One of the two wooden stops in this instrument. Wood in more recent years is so expensive that they just save them for the stop pipes, the low bass notes, and they say they've just been tucked in wherever they can squeeze them in.
This is so neat. You can hear the hum of the air, the hiss of it going.
And right here, we're just getting the side view of the Schwellwerk, the swell. So it's in a box with shutters, like Venetian blinds. The one division in which the organist can swell the sound, go from piano to open. Also within reach, the organist can reach this from the front and tune to save some money. Tuning the reeds, I'll show you a reed close up. Just talking about the reed instrument, the reed pipe, metal, boot, resonator, and this is the tuning rod. So inside, if I take the boot off, there's just a flap of metal here, and the tuning rod, I could take a knife and tune it, so you just slide it down. So it's called a reed because the air buzzes. I might be able to get a sound. So it's just this tangent, metal tangent, flapping back and forth. It's called a reed, similar to a clarinet. Although trumpets are produced, the organ trumpet is produced by this method, but it sounds more like it doesn't. So the organ trumpet does not sound like the orchestral trumpet. It's less round. It's more because of the buzz of the. And these are the pipes that need to be tuned at least twice a year. Like human beings, they're very sensitive to change in weather. They do not like humidity, and the dryness of winter changes their pitch. So always at the weather change. So in the spring, in time for Easter, and before the furnace, just after the furnace goes on in the fall.
And so this tuning, you said you can do some of it.
I'm not very good at it. I don't have that aptitude. I have no patience. But yes, there is a way to. There is a way to open this, so they just gain more access. But if you step up there, go inside our organ, like go right on. Well, I guess you could do that.
Oh, whoa.
So you see this is a rank of pipes. I believe this is the Shalamai right on the front, and just see the shape. The color comes from the shape of the actual pipe. Just the way the bulb at the top. You have the boot, and then you have the shape of the pipe. It's kind of very. It's like a flower.
Yeah.
Like a lily. So it gives really bright harmonics. So you hear the nasality, the buzzing of the. So this is a very German sound, in that this is a reproduction of a German 17th century Baroque instrument, basically to the letter. And then the longer pipes, see they have a different bell shape. It's the Dulcian, so it's an octave lower. I call this the comedian of the organ. Is that how you sound in the morning? But the flip side is, for a 17th century Baroque organ, this is incredibly useful for the passion of playing an Anglican service. Particularly the psalm, it's my go-to sound if there's a storm or if there is sorrow, sadness. So if I'm playing a a psalm tune, and I want some passion, I pull the comedian. Of the morning. So for me, that's the fun part of being an organist. We are orchestrators. We choose the timbres. That's the creative part of bringing the music to life. And so before I play any hymn, I'm thinking tempo, color. How do I want to communicate this music to the congregation? How do I want to inspire them? What mood do I want to help them find? So it's, I would say that is probably what keeps me at this profession as an organist, the creativity involved. And somebody made a comment that, oh, you're not taken seriously, Scott, organists aren't taken seriously because you use your hands. And I thought, yeah, my hands, it's like we're finely tuned athletes right here. If we don't know how to relax, if we don't keep ourselves in shape, we can very easily strain a muscle, and then you can't play because you're in pain. So we're athletes in the sense that we constantly have to keep ourselves physically in top form. But in order to bring music to life, you're using your mind for the style, certainly the organ, what colors you are using, what we call registration, which stops we pull to achieve that. And then finally you add your soul so that you reach the listener, the congregation. So it is, as I think a term you used, Jessica, full-bodied endeavor. And then we also have the challenge of sitting on the bench. Organists have terrible backs because the minute you lift your feet off, it goes to the back, right? So like to maintain good posture is really challenging when we kind of start to do our octopus act. And certainly on a tracker organ, which is all mechanical, it is no electronic aid. Everything is direct physical contact. It means that I'm really off my center, reaching for stops while I'm playing. So that's the disadvantage of this style, but the sound is so beautiful in just the excellence, the integrity of this reproduction of a 17th century German Baroque instrument, which has incredible integrity. What defines this style of instrument from the usual church organ that we used to have at the front, several versions through the decades, is the Werkprinzip. So there's a distinct nomenclature of each division. So this is what you would call the organ sound. And now on the great organ, the middle manual. So there's your fundamental. Then we add in acoustics. I had an acoustic course in my second year undergraduate in Toronto. And so you learn that you take a string and you stop it at the halfway point. Suddenly the string sounds an octave higher. Then you press it here. So the quarter, you get an octave higher. So this, the bottom pipe of this is a 8 feet long, and that's probably what we see in the middle, the second case over on this side as well. You probably can't see that. So the longest pipe is 8 feet long. Also on the organ, there's one pipe for every key. So how many keys on the organ? It's 1, 2, 4 and a half octaves, 12 notes per octave. So you do the math. On the pedal, it's 2.5 octaves, but there's one pipe for every pitch. So I think that's always a surprise to people, that it doesn't look like much, but there are thousands of pipes in there. And one of the reasons the organ is one of the most expensive instruments. But it's a one-man orchestra, and it traditionally has been the organ of the congregation, in that it's very insistent sound. It's just really helpful to support and lead a congregation. So let's go back to the 8-foot. So I'm just gonna hold the same chord. Let me say, I'll hold the same note, middle C. Then I add the 4-foot, octave above, 2 octaves above, and then we also have a partial. We have the 15th, which is that note. So the principal chorus. And then even to strengthen the sound for fugues in particular, this stop is called mixture. It's either 4 or 5 pipe sound at the same time. If I start at the bottom and go up by octave, you'll notice that the pitch starts to drop. So it's kind of what it breaks back. It breaks down. So that it's not screechy, it's full-blooded at the top, and lots of clarity in the bass for fugue. So this is a solo sound for fugues or Baroque solo music. So a real solo sound, virile out there. I never use this in a service. It's just, it kills congregational singing. I always try to play under the congregation and support from that direction, and just occasionally. So I save this for the postlude, which is the solo prima donna moment for the organ at the end. And if I play a piece without that strong stop, the applause is less, I've noticed. So go figure. So that's the great organ. And then, the Werkprinzip, you hear it on the secondary manual, which is the positif down here. There's your 8 foot, 4 foot. Here is a partial, and then the mixture. And the positif is at the top. It's in the crown position of the case. So it speaking over us. So you hear it more clearly out there. And so I'm going to pull the grate back, and then on the Schwelweg, the swell here it is again. So each manual has its own principal chorus. So this is the integrity of this style of organ, where on the organs of the past, this was not as important. As the organ became more orchestral, the desire to imitate the orchestra in the 19th century, and the arrival of electricity being introduced, so that the console was then able to be separated from the pipes and spread across large distances, and then also large consoles just with the keyboard and the mechanism inside in order to make contact. So that involved leather pouches, little air things, boom, electro-pneumatic, boom, 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 boom. You'd hear that inside the console. And that's the difference. So up until like the mid 19th century, all consoles had to be like attached to the pipes. But this considered progress at the time, which was very exciting, allowed the separation of console and also just more aids for the organist to be able to push pistons, push buttons, so the stops could change at the push of a thumb. So you didn't have to do all the leaning and grabbing and octopus act. The downside to that is, in this instrument, the tracker, it's like a piano or a harpsichord. You're in direct contact when the palette opens. So, like I can control. I can even caress it. Where on the electro-pneumatic, like the old organ, it's like pushing a doorbell. Like you push the doorbell, you have no control when the sound. It's like push the key, Avon calling. So from that point of view, it's not nearly as satisfying for the performer. Also, there are a lot of complaints with the mechanism that was considered progress in the 1850s, tubular pneumatic, which meant all the wires were surrounded with this big, heavy lead sheath. So you just had all these snakes of heavy lead. And that's what eventually breaks down over time. And the wires, and they're buried under the ground, they're not accessible. And from experience, the maintenance cost of that kind of organ after a few years becomes prohibitive. So I think that explains why the organ needed to be replaced in 1951. It was that tubular pneumatic, and it had just died. And you couldn't, like automobiles or any mechanical invention, the parts weren't available. So it was just, it's a losing battle. So when they replaced the instrument in 1951, and it was a rebuild, it was probably using the best of the old, but it was still, the console was separated, and any new pipes that were put in were using materials of the early 50s. However, the quality was not there because all the best had been directed to the war effort. So anything new put in there was showing problems within 20 years. And the other challenge with the organ at the front is there are a lot of pipes. Also, in those days, they built pipes with high lead content, which made for a more opaque sound, like oh, which was considered like the church sound or orchestral sound in those days. But lead is heavy, so the pipes would start to keel over. And so let me just show you this pipe is even already kind of leaning over by its own weight, and somehow it got mushed in a move. When I was working at St. James downtown, the organ maintenance man came in and said, "Scott, who was in the organ?" Because rows of pipes were like all like this. And I had no idea. No one goes in there. It's inaccessible. You have to know which wooden panels to unlatch and crawl in. I thought it might have been the resident cat at the time. But I still can't imagine where she got scared and just woofed and flattened a whole line of pipes. I really don't know. It's still a mystery to this day. But I think partly it just might just been the weight. I mean, this is a very heavy pipe. You know, just want to you know, there's a fair bit of weight.
That's massive.
And see, it's balancing on this toe. So it's sitting on the air chest, and the palate would be here, and the air's coming through the chest. So that's another reed stop. Yeah, we can't even tune it because actually I think it's the tuning rod that's held it in place, so it hasn't fallen. But again, this is quite an old pipe. The scale of the pipe also determines the sound. This would be a gamba, a string, what we call a string. So it's a very narrow scale. So it just funnels. So the sound is more like this. You kind of have one on this organ, solitional. But this is warm though. This is warmer than this. This would be more Again, trying to imitate a violin or a cello. So the air enters here, comes out the mouth. In order to project the sound, they put this slat of wood, which we call the beard, to try and get the sound out this way. Also, I can't really see the mouth on this one. And I'm not sure, this is the only one I have with a mouth. Anyway, you just pretend it's the other direction, but so the air would go over that metal surface. I can't see it, but in the old style of organ building, they would nick it. They take a file and nick it, and that would spread the sound. So instead of it would be so it just alters the sound. This is what we call voicing. And we certainly voice the Baroque instrument. Again, it's open toe, very open toe, so this is quite closed. So that shows me that up front, the air pressure would be really high, which tends to like kind of squashes the sound a bit. And also they probably had to do it to project it out of the closet it was being stored in. And another challenge is, in order to support the congregation, the organist would need to pull more stops than desired. Screaming into the chancel, the choir would be feel like they're being drowned out in order that the organ have enough volume down in this part of the nave. So as an organist, I've never understood why the organs of the past were stuck in any available space. Apparently not discussed beforehand, just whatever was left. And it just never made sense to me that we didn't put the lectern inside a closet and have the reader read from there. I just never understood that as I grew up, and I was in my mid-20s and happened to be at a church with a major rebuild. So I got to experience how he would deal with just what I've been talking about. And mid-70s, so one idea was to put a shell around the Great Division, which is the main division, like put a wooden shell around it. Kind of like this division's in a box with shutters that we can open and shut, but in the front they just put 3 sides and just left it open, which again would help like push the sound out a bit, but eventually not really successful. The other factor here in why a new organ was being discussed was the state of the pipework, as I mentioned. The organ console was in a pit just behind the prie-dieu on this side of the church. And meanwhile, the choir of men and boys had burgeoned unto a total of 50. Probably 20 boys plus probationers, and then all the men. So it was an Anglican chancel to have no ventilation. So with our robes and summer humidity, it was a challenge. So I think it was those factors that precipitated the exploration. So, as I said before, did I say before, in the 1960s, there was an organ revolution. And it started here in Montreal, actually. It was Ars Organi. So it was the Bernard Legacies and some of his colleagues, whose names just slip me at the moment. And that's one reason. So it was Queen Mary Road United Church which got the first Beckeroth organ in 1959. A small tracker. It was since located to Mountainside. Now it's in storage to be hopefully installed in its new home in Burke's Chapel on McGill campus. And then because of that contract, or in tandem, St. Joseph's Oratory in 1960, that fabulous von Beckeroth in the back gallery. So that set the interest in the tracker organ, the joy of the organist, being able to really control the sounds, and just the connection to Europe, the historical organs, which 300 years later are still speaking in relatively good health, many of them. So during my university in Toronto around 1970, I was the students who were writing the powers that be that we need a tracker organ on campus. This is the future of the organist. This is what is needed for our profession, so we can be taken more seriously. And we didn't get it before I graduated, but I did go back and play it at a later date. And then the organist at the time, in early 70s, because of this movement, was being advised by his colleagues, you need to reach out to the local builders and at least get a quote from them if you don't want to be a laughingstock of the organ community. And of course, Casavant provided a rebuild estimate. Carl Wilhelm, who had worked for von Beckeroth and I think was part of the von Beckeroth installation at the Oratory, submitted this proposition. But again, German. He walked into the church and said, well, I will build an organ, back wall or transept, nowhere else. Organ will not work. So this takes us to the next area of integrity, professionalism, and And he had a way, dust is so, you want me? Only here. So thus began the pastoral challenge of the musician of the time. And totally not in his background. He had never played a tracker, I suspect. And then the more he thought of it, it just made sense. But partly because of the challenge in the chancel, just a hot mess. Oh, the other thing, the church ladies loved to come up for communion and tousle the boys' hair on the way. So it was quite the circus. I should think. I can only imagine. And I think just in those days, I think Jessica, you told me Highway 15 had been built, so they weren't filling the pews at the back wall anymore. The decline in population had already started. So thus began the journey, and as it turned out, Carl Wilhelm undercut everybody, and undercut Casavant, and I don't know who the other builder was. I understand Casavant also provided. They realized to be competitive, they had to get on board with the organ movement, the tracker revival, the organ revival movement of the 60s. We were now in 1970. So I'm shocked at how close this case and concept is to the Wilhelm, which we finally went for. I also looked at the stop list, which are the colors, very close. So which also proves just the integrity, the recipe. That's the recipe of the Baroque organ. So I think Wilhelm won because he desperately needed his first major instrument in this area. I think he was very strategic in coming in at a lower price with the knowledge that this could be a showcase organ, which is in fact what happened. So I think what was the cost? Around 80,000, somewhere in that, 80, 85?
Ooh, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Something like that. So here we are 50 years later. Minimal maintenance. This is not a nightmare. Now it has its little things. We just went through a humidity issue at the end of the summer, like the first time in my 7 years here. But it was just an hour of work, just going in and being able to touch it and fix it. So that's the advantage of just the pure mechanical action.
Maybe can you explain to us, how does humidity affect this kind of organ? What does it do?
Same way it affects humans. we expand, we sweat. So that was the case. There was a pipe stuck here. My sub, it was on this manual, but I'll do it here. My sub discovered it when she played. So she put a marker on that key, like avoid that key. So I think it was just the bolt, the metal that kind of at the lever level where the tracker goes here and then shifts direction, just expanded and then rubs against the wood. So I think the maintenance guy just loosened it a little bit. So just water damage. And then we had a low pedal note that was ciphering. We call that a cipher, where the palate stays open and the air keeps going through. So the other advantage of this organ is if that happens, you can often tap it free. You can often just do that. So you just shake it up a little bit, like if you're tense or whatever. And whereas you can't do that in the old style of organ. You would have to go into the chamber, climb very uncomfortably, walk a little tiny board to get to the stop, pull the stop out, and possibly have to stuff a an old shirt or something, because, and literally by the time I left St. James, it was monsoon land. Like the big pedal pipes, there was just this gush of air come out. I emptied the kitchen of tea towels one weekend, and then I started bringing my old shirts just to stuff the exposed holes. And Professor, who is our honorary? Patricia Kirkpatrick. She was taking a service at St. James, and a pipe stuck like this, and she said, "That's it, turn the organ off, go to the piano." Where here, but it was good that the congregation just heard how I had to deal with it a bit. And so that's, again, another advantage to just the simplicity of this design, not complicated. The other interesting thing is that the organ, until the Industrial Revolution, was the most complex machine that man made. So as I mentioned before, wood is so much more expensive today, so more and more pipes are being built with silver, a silver component with lead. A little bit of lead, but more silver. But so I would say these are definitely 19th century pipes from old organs. So this is a wooden flute. So this one would be like, they sound like a recorder, because we call this a stopped flute, again, which changes, again, it's the, let's say that's 2 feet, let's say that's a foot, but you stop it and it sounds an octave higher. So it's going to, it's a stopped flute which, again, it squashes some of the harmonics. So see, it's a more fundamental sound. It's not that colorful. And you tune this by manipulating the stopper up and down. But these pipes tend, because it's wood, this tends to hold. It doesn't need to be tuned twice a year like the reeds. The reeds, being metal, are really more sensitive and more delicate to temperature change, where the wood, they definitely hold. But we're due for a full tuning. I have no idea when the last one was. I think quite a while. So every pipe will have to be addressed. Every pipe that they can reach will need to be adjusted somehow. And here's another wooden, so this is an open flute. It has no stopper, but it has a flap on the top. So this will be like a melodia. So this would be more like I call this a prima donna stop. It's more like, listen to me. So a little more color, a little more personality. And again, you tune it with the flap. You know, if it just goes out, that's how you just change the sound. Oh, here's the nicks I was talking about. So this is a romantic style of voicing, where the air comes across the lip, and then they've taken a nick, they've nicked it. So like when in my 20s, this was not fashionable. So I would go up and glue pieces of paper across the nicks, so that we would achieve a chiff, which is, hear the attack? Where this is, whoops. Like I would tell my choir that I don't hear the consonant. Ton, where this is just, glory to God in the Father. No, I need glory to God in the Father. Anyway, it can be a useful sound if you're doing orchestral pieces, if you want just like a honk. So these are it's all part of being an organist and understanding the construction of the pipe, and that's knowledge that helps you pull combinations that work together. So you learn the rules, and then once you know the rules, then you can break them. One interesting thing in the full tuning that we're doing, I've always felt this organ doesn't have the bottom that I'd like, and I think it's partly the acoustic. Certainly, I think the bass voice in the choir is eaten up by the room more than sopranos, and I think we hear that in the organ. So I just learned from Denis Juget, our organ maintenance man, that there is possibility that this low bass pedal I find it's just a little very pointed, which is good. But there's something about the Anglican sound that if it just really feel the bottom and just a little more weight, especially on full organ when you've got the really high partials. You know, if the tree is up here reaching for the sun, the roots need to go as far in the opposite direction. So he says that there's a bit of wiggle room, that he could open this and make it a little fatter. And I think I'll be very happy. Because I find when I mix it with, there's also a 16-foot on the manual.
But it's certainly not as loud as some of the other things that you've been playing as we've been filming.
Yeah. Well, I consider this the emotional stop of the organ. I think this is my connection to the soul of the congregation. And so when I add the other 16-foot from this manual, see, already it's bigger. And then we have a trick. Again, from my acoustic scores, we learn how to manufacture harmonics. So what we do is we add a fifth. And it creates the impression of an octave lower. So you feel the earthquake a little bit. And we always joke that we hope that makes the congregation drop more onto the collection plate. So these are just some of the tricks of the trade to communicate. Because this is a very mechanical instrument. In some players, like you have to inject your own soul and your own tricks of the trade to make it speak. And very beautiful, but so like a beautiful woman, and that's it, you know? This is a stunning work of art, but how to communicate it, how to bring it to life. So there is another stop, and it's actually in the let me get my spotlight. It's on the outside of the case. Outside of the case, it's the 16-foot principle. Well, the Werk principle is also on the pedal division as well. So I'll do it here or there.
Whatever.
This one. So there's the lowest pipe.
It's so huge.
So huge. So 50 years, and this organ is doing really well, but there's an example that the weight of that pipe is just, sitting on its toe. So it's starting to collapse into itself. So that will need to be addressed in the future. It's just part of the aging process. So then if you mix it with the other one, if you mix the three of them together, then I add my 32-foot. So I can fake a bit of, reverberation there. So yeah, let me show you the So again, that it matches the organ, and actually I meant to do the echo, possibility of the echo. So there's 16 foot, 8 foot, 4 foot, and mixture. So that's the plenum, what we call the principal chorus on the pedal. And that would be the pedal solo sound. And for a bit more bite, we add the pazan, which is like a trombone, a reed. So for the pedal, we need, I go to a dancing store, supply store, and buy tap shoes. That's what most organists wear, tap shoes. So the heel is slightly raised sometimes. Sometimes I even go to a shoemaker and add a piece. So it just takes the tension off the ankle. So we can trill. So I'm playing a bit of Bach pedal solo from his Toccata and Fugue in C. Bach was really known as a performer in his younger years. He was a brilliant performer. So that his fame was as a younger man, just because of his brilliance of making the organ talk, really speak. We call this a Bach organ because this is the sound that he wrote for. That was his period. I just wanted to show you the one feature of this period is without the electronic aids to change stops, we get volume contrast through the principle of terraced dynamics. So here's the main. So 1 is the loudest, 2. So 3 is the tiniest. It sounds louder here because it's in our face, but out there, this is a sound decaying into the distance. Terrace dynamics. So I use that a lot. That's how we can pull the stops ahead of time and then just jump for different variations in volume. And then we can couple them. So I've filled it out a bit. And Bach was known, he was hired as a critic for new organs, if the installation was worthy, and he always would come in and test the lungs of the organ by full playing them. So that is an 18th century Baroque organ sound. Vibrant, colorful. Some might say in your face, but I just think it's what you're used to. We're not used to the organ speaking directly to us. So that's the organ, what I would call the organ, what you think of when you are going to hear an organ. But we also have beautiful flutes. So on the great organ, I can also do the echo thing. And again, three different constructions of the flute. So this would be metal, stopped. The roar flute often has it's a metal pipe, but it has a wooden chimney. So what it's doing is allowing certain harmonics to come out and others not. Whole flute, this is an open flute, so just pure, just a straight metal. So it's kind of like the melodia that I played earlier, see? In a way less colorful. And then a Holzgedeckt, a stopped. Then you can add a 4-foot flute. I'll just do the 4-foot flutes separately because they're so beautiful on this organ. We've been really fortunate. The man who voiced this instrument, who took every pipe and just lovingly created the mouth and how much air got through, how it spoke, came from a background of ancient instruments. So he had an ear for crumhorns and recorders, and just all those kind of unique sounds of that era. We get to enjoy them here. Here's the 4-foot Spitz flute. Oh, I know, the Spitz flute is tapered. So it's wider at the bottom and tapers like this. So it squashes harmonics in a different way. Koppel flute, stopped, chimney. So I find that really beautiful. That's why I introduced the Benedictus to it. And I warm it with the tremulant, so maybe it sounds a little more Anglican. I think that's the difference. The German Baroque is very, das ist so, do, boom, boom. In Anglicans, there's a passion and a warmth. So I'm sure that Carl Wilhelm is like appalled at how we play this instrument because we bring a different personality out of it. And then the 4-foot here, Block flute. So like recorder. So again, the echo. So Christmas Noels, you use that. And then there's a 2-foot flute on this one, Wald flute. So I think this is like straight, but it has a hole halfway up. So this is why it's so brilliant. Piquant. So this 8 and 2 combination is one of our delightful ones, right?
So then from the mechanical perspective, what you're doing when you're pulling the stops is you're telling the organ where to send the air?
Yes, when I pull this stop, the tracker is that small sheaf of wood.
Yeah.
Is attached. It's this pulls. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see. Can you see it? If I pull this, do you see any motion?
I don't, but while you're playing, I can hear wood moving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? What about when I pull this stop? Do you see anything?
Oh, yes, I do.
I have to play it.
You have to play it, yeah.
I have to play it.
But that's so cool.
That's my direct link to the sound. I can determine when it sounds. Like I feel resistance. So I have to so we play on our big toes. That's good technique, efficient. Whereas up there, I would just go, and it's like Avon calling, like you have no control. And yeah, so the tracker goes here, then there's a little pivot thing. I forget a joint that just changes the direction to reach the appropriate pipe. And voila. So the interesting thing of this organ, it does have a French component. And that's why I play early French music here, because we can approximate it somewhat. The most spectacular example is on the positif. It's called the cornet. It takes 5 stops. Fundamental, octave above, 2 octaves above, octave above, 15th, 2 octaves above, 17th, 19th. So actually that's 6. And what you get, what they call the cornet. Is very colorful, very out there. I use that sound when I introduce a less familiar hymn, and sometimes even in the first verse, so the congregation can really hear the melody. And then we can take that sound and couple it to the great organ. So I'm pulling 8, 4-foot principal, trumpet. Is like grand jeu. If I couple it with the cornet, then we have a grand jeu. Quasi French. The Baroque French reeds, the trumpets are really fiery, like dominate. Maybe if I mix this in, it'll kind of give the idea. So the reeds are really edgy. Whereas our great trumpet is a chorus reed. It's meant to blend, and so I'm starting to use it in final verses of hymns, just to give the organ a bit more punch. So I would do. So it's a loudness rather than going higher, screamier. See, that kills congregational singing. Mm-hmm. So I never ever use, as I said earlier, but I'm starting to use that trumpet that blends. That 32-foot on the final chord for that emotional punch at the end.
It's just incredible to me how after 7 years of working with this instrument, you're still finding new ways to make it speak.
It's endless. Yeah, it's endless. And new compositions. Here's one really neat thing that the old style of organ can't do. And modern composers use this. I think my predecessor, the female organist, played pieces like this, where you're playing along. the Titanic has sunk. And the reverse, you can do the same thing. So that shows that the air is emptying out of the pipe, and now it's all going to come in. So I have to be careful I don't do this in service. Well, that wasn't so bad. But it's still
a little scary.
It's still not advisable. Well, that's interesting. That wasn't as dramatic. Yeah, so that's again an illustration that because it's mechanical, if I want to turn the organ off, I have to push in all the stops, block all air passage to the speaking pipes. But the sound is so beautiful here, it's worth every ounce of energy. Oh, we didn't do all the reeds. This is particularly beautiful on this instrument. I think it comes from his Christoph Linde's background experience with ancient instruments, the crumb horn. I'm going to mix it just to warm it. But this is truly beautiful. Beautiful. It can be a comedian too.
It's a little bassoony.
Yeah, it's like a bassoon. Yeah. So that's the stop I used to introduce the Gloria. It's jovial one in that register. But some of the really introspective Bach chorale preludes up here with the tremulant. Here's another thing we can do on the tracker organ. So I pull this 8-foot. So there's a dynamic called the voix celeste, where on the romantic organs there would be that stop, then there would be another rank tuned slightly sharp. So you get the air banging their heads against each other, which warms the sound. But we can create, so I'm going to pull the other 8-foot here, then we push this one in to the pencil mark that we've been using for decades here. It's subtle. But because it's slightly out of tune, it softens it.
Right.
So I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna pull it out now. It's really subtle. It's like the clouds came out. Now the sun. So it's very subtle, but that's one way we can create more of a churchy sound.
Right, because you don't just have binary control on-off. You can change things a little bit by adjusting the stop.
But if you do it too much, when you go up here, see it's out of tune? Even that's out of tune. So that's not attractive. So we've got a pencil mark here. It's been there for decades. So that also points another dynamic that you mentioned, that this really is a solo instrument. So that's maybe the one thing that works against it a little for accompanying Anglican liturgy. And the fact that my back is, to the people. So communication is compromised. But that's where my trusty little electronic piano comes in. And means I can speak directly to the choir. And sometimes it's just easier. I can get the right effect. I can get the Anglican effect on this keyboard. So the technology has just gone through the ceiling in recent years. Cost is way down. Tons of sound, organ sounds. I even accompany chants and whatnot here. But I can mix it with the piano if I want. It aids in leadership. This is my favorite sound, and purists, musicians sometimes roll their eyes, but this is the Anglican sound. What do I call it? This is my sense of humor. I'll play it first. That's kind of how the front organ would have sounded to the congregation, like distant,
ethereal.
Peaceful, ethereal. I call it music from heaven. Lovingly. but I use this sound a lot. I just used it last week in the Lord's Prayer that we do for the first time, and I think it really works. Again, I mix it with piano. Because if I play it alone, it's a little like taking an amoeba for a walk. It's kind of like there's not real definition. But if I add the piano sound, you get the attack. So I did.
It's incredible how different it sounds from the organ. Like now that we've been just like listening to the organ over and over, how much less it sounds.
Yes, it's less intense. I mean, I can play it louder, but I don't want that.
Well, and it still doesn't have quite the same force underpinning it.
Well, it's not acoustic, first of all. It's electronic. Again, I don't really have control, even though the touch is not bad for electronic piano. It's not airwaves moving through the space. I don't think you feel this the same way. Acoustic instruments you feel. I think that's what live music should be. This is a nice approximation. I mean, I can scream organ sounds, but it's not pleasant. No, let me go back. I think there is a tutti. So that kind of approximates what the old organ would sound like. See, it's rounded, nothing direct. And it definitely has its place. But I think ultimately it's less interesting. It's great for a mood, but I have this to set the mood. And I use it a lot, and I actually love it. I've played the choir. I don't want the congregation to hear this, but so what is it? So? But see, they're not in tune.
Yeah, it's not bad though.
It's not bad. Yeah, so the soprano. So I think they've taken computer recordings of singers and put them together, but they've made it realistic. Most choirs don't sing in tune. And you hear the altos turning to the tenors. And the bass.
It does sound a little silly when you do them all in a row like that.
But yeah. So there's some really neat songs. Enough that we're here to talk
Yeah,
about
with the organ.
But you can tell I love my toy.
Well, yeah, and I think it's so interesting too, like listening to the way that it approximates but doesn't reproduce, because it's a different instrument.
And it's a great foil for this. Very direct instrument. But if I had my druthers, I'd prefer this. But the fact that I don't have electrical assistance means I have to either train patrons or stop pullers. So that's a big time investment. And it's also very unnerving for the stop pullers. People, even musicians, have trouble, and I'm told I'm terrible at it because I want to enjoy the music, and so I lose my concentration. I'm late. I'm late with the stop change. So I've been told by a colleague I'm not good. So that's just some insights to to how we approach our art and the fun it is, really. But absolutely everything, it's pre-thought.
Right. Well, and it's physical work, and it's head work, and it's heart work.
Yeah.
You're getting the real full, not just body, but full person workout.
Yeah. So apparently St. Augustine said, "Those who sing pray twice." So those who play organ play thrice.
Yeah, at least. When we're looking at like documents like this that have the list of things, because we have one of those for our 1888 organ, and then the 1893 replacement, and the 1951 organ, and then this is the 1973 one. Are those the names of the stops?
Yes. And again, this is what we come to learn the language, and then we learn the pipe, the scale of the pipe, the construction of the pipe. So quintiton, again the quint. Oh, well, he changed it. It's now a bourdon. So that got changed.
Oh yeah, because this is June 1972 quote. So it would have been.
So I'm glad it went to the bourdon, I think. Yeah, it's an interesting sound, the quintiton. But I think in this acoustic, I'm happy. We have the more fundamental sound. This is a bit quinty. The quinty meaning the fifth partial. So like you'd hear that pitch rather than
I see
the bottom pitch. Boom, 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 boom.
So it would make it even less of a...
Less weighty, less foundation, less bottom. I think in this acoustic, that was a good change. Principle 8, but again, that's the Werkprinzip, that's the principal chorus I'm talking about. So the difference between this organ and the front organ, for some reason...
I didn't even get the specs from the front organ.
Well, I can tell you that there would probably be 3 8-foots and two 4-foots, maybe a 2 2/3, and maybe a couple of harmonics. So as we entered the Romantic era and the desire to imitate the orchestra, all this upper work became out of fashion.
So yeah, this is the 1951.
Yeah. So I was right, 3 8-foots. So all they would be doing is like stacking similar sounds one on one each other, like.
Right, rather than the kind of, as you were showing, the blend of differences.
Different harmonics. So this is the coupling. This is how I couple. Oh no, swell. No, that's right. So 8 foot, and then. So you just get this thick foundation sound, and I would say that's the personality of those fine organs, like opaque.
Right, as you're needing to really just push sound out rather than...
Partly because it's stuck in there, but again, deafening the choir in the process. And then there's 2/4, principal and the flute, the same as here. The tune 2/3, there. The 15th, yes, and the harmonics. So 17, 19, and 22. Very, it just gave a little bit of brightness, but not scintillating. Like kind of pathetic. That's how I would characterize it. And chimes, of course, in preparation. But no reed, no trumpet on the grate. Whereas here we have the full spectrum, 16. So it's pretty close, but the other difference is how it's voiced. Open toe, less wind pressure, it's lighter, so that makes the sound less opaque, probably more silver in the construction of the pipe, more silver, and the percentage of lead and silver was weighted towards silver. And so it looks pretty close until you come to the mixture. And here it's 4 and 5 ranks versus 3, and the full spectrum. Wow. This is kind of like a cornet, like a weak cornet. And this sound, but it would have been more like strings, pathetic. Okay, swell. Again, look at my God, 5 8-foots. Oh, the one is the voix celeste. But see, so there's a lot of metal in there, a lot of ranks that really aren't doing much. The beauty of this, every stop has a presence and a personality. That's, I think, the strongest feature of this organ. You could happily play on one stop for hours. There's so much interest, right? Like a piano. Aeolian, like that's the music from heaven stop. Just like so everybody can talk during the prelude.
Let me get the 1893 organ specs so we can do a three-way comparison. Although the 1893 ones are handwritten, so they'll be a lot harder to.
Okay, look. They have a triangular flute, so it would have been 3 sides. A wooden triangular flute. So that's interesting. That would be an interesting sound. See, there would be a few fantastic sounds, like really interesting, but blotted out by all this foundation work. And often when I play the organ, I tend to play the octave above harmonic and less on the foundation, because that's where the people are singing. So I don't want to blat you there. I want to, come around you, like a halo around you. And piccolo, yeah. There's that mixture again. Hideous. Contrafagot, swell, oboe, much heavier. These are lighter and, again, more upper harmonics, just more interesting. I can just imagine this contrafagato, this trumpet and this oboe, very dense and blatty, I can just hear it. And falling over by its own weight. Okay, so the pedal, the head is open wood. So I miss the open wood, which is full length, and that the building would shake. But unfortunately, it was stuck in the back wall there. So how much of it got out is a very real possibility. Choral bass. Again, the trombone here would have been really bladdy, high pressure, you know, like I can't even describe it.
Very foghorn.
Yeah, like not pleasant. It's certainly a racket and a foundation, but a real prima donna. Let's just say. And I see tons of couplers. So with all the electronic aids, you can expand the organ by the octave plays above, just by pushing a tab. And then you have all these pistons, all this mechanical aid, so you can quickly change colors. So that is nice to have. I mean, I do have to make the choice and not play some romantic music for postludes, because I just can't do I can't do everything. And I often cheat on my soundscape. I just preset some sounds, and so I'm not playing the music totally accurately as regarding registration and the dynamics. I approximate it. So I do have to cut a corner there, or just not play certain pieces, or get Mike Haslam to come in and pull stops, and he does that occasionally when I really want to do something more interesting. But again, it's even just finding rehearsal time with the page turner. It's called life these days. Electric blower of ample capacity to be supplied by the builders. Ample capacity. Wiring and switches to be at the charge of the purchasers. So a lot of things that can go wrong, and I've lived through many of those. Absolutely. Like the Church of St. James the Apostle, a nightmare of what's the word we were just using? A maintenance nightmare. Unbelievable.
So then all of the organs before the 1973 organ in this church would have had like real best before dates.
Oh yes, and the blowers go. Again, I think it's the high air pressure is part of the reason they didn't last. It's really quite low in these instruments. And that's why the instrument sings. It doesn't assault you.
Right.
It assaults you with harmonics and color, but not with just pure. So it's the same thing with choirs. Choirs can sing that way, or if the choir director demands, they'll sing, from above, so it's less ugly. Of course, I don't use those words.
Not to the choir.
People, not to the. I want them to come back. Yeah, it's fascinating, but when I read through all of this, it's the same story that I've met through my whole career, and it's the tug of war. See, that's the other interesting thing. That's why I call this instrument a real pastoral feat, because you had to deal with the rector, the parishioners who had put money into the front organ, often in memory of somebody. Just the money itself, just the cost itself, much less the shift to the back. However, before the Oxford movement, the music came from the back. I had a priest, I think it was Peter Hannon, explained that when the Oxford movement came in, well, previous to that, canons and deacons and the like were all part of a community in the abbeys in England and I guess even the parish churches. And they all sat at the front robed. And then when things started to dissipate and shift for whatever reason, that's where the idea was, we'll move the choir to the front. We'll robe the choir. And without any discussion with the professional and their advice, and sticking the choir in what I always call another room. The chancel is another room. It's the arch. That's the killer of the sound. It holds the sound in.
Well, we can see even now that just the way that the light is, it's really like deep in shadow there.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that acoustically, it's kind of in an acoustic shadow as well.
Well, this is probably not so bad to sing in, the choir facing each other, but it doesn't get out. So it begs the point: what is the purpose of the choir? What is the role of the choir? Hopefully, to support the congregational song and also be in a position of advantageous communication. And in this case, the acoustic arch. And it took me 3 years to figure this out, so that's why we're in collegiate style, exactly the way the choir would have sat 50 years ago in the chancel. It's good that the choir, have visual communication, sing to each other. I think it helps blend and the ensemble. And the fact that they can sing naturally in this position, knowing that the room does its job for us. And really, all musicians will say the room is the most important stop, certainly for the organ, the most important stop. And we're fortunate to have a world-class acoustic.
Yeah, you've talked before about how beautifully the sound kind of just funnels.
It totally funnels. Probably the challenge is, because it funnels so beautifully, we need to articulate more than we do, but that's an eternal struggle with choirs. I don't think, most choirs, you don't understand their words. And I harp at that, but it does take energy and work. Yeah, it's work. So we have this world-class instrument. I truly believe world-class, just the phenomenal brilliance of Carl Wilhelm and his integrity in building a really fine work of art. And then the good fortune of the voicer, Christoph Linde, who only worked, this is the only Wilhelm that he worked on. So when you go to the cathedral, when you go to the big Presbyterian Church downtown Toronto, which is where I had my first organ lessons at university, it's not nearly as beautiful. Partly because of the voicing and partly because of the room. The acoustic is not as generous as we have here.
Which is so interesting because when this was built, they were bringing the organ from the old church. They brought the 1893 organ with them when this was built in 1912. And so the space wasn't necessarily designed with an organ in mind.
That's my experience. My impression is that no church in North America is designed with the organ in mind. So we just get this spare area that isn't required for an exit or whatever. I think it was a misinterpretation of the crucifix form of the cathedral, the parish churches here. At least in the British cathedrals, the choir is still in the main piece of architecture. And so the sound does travel. But by making the little chancel like the head, the top of the cross, the sound definitely gets locked up there and is, in my opinion, not effective for leadership. So one of the arguments I was given through my career, the choir is there to lead the congregation when they stand, when they sit. But I've not always felt that the congregation even follows what's happening in the chancel. So I don't quite buy that
well, and there's
argument.
Always, at the very least, one person in the chancel to be a guide.
True.
And you can print it in the bulletin. You can say verbally, "Let's all stand."
Exactly.
But,
So I've definitely. So I'm anyway, what I know there's one other. Oh yes. So the fact that this organ has been here for 50 years and been relatively maintenance-free, really, and is still very reliable, speaking beautifully, is a testament to the integrity of the project, and trusting the professionals, their knowledge, and the fact that we've got 50 years of service for the money. This was an amazing investment. Like, I was just doing the math, 50 years, let's say it was 100,000. It wasn't quite, but so that's what like 50 years, is that 2,000 a year?
That's 2,000 a year.
So, you know, we've had this instrument for $2,000 a year because we did it right. It was done right. Now, it's not to say it's perfect, you know, it's a lot of emotion moving to the back, totally understandable, but I really think the benefits have outweighed all of that. And certainly the layout of money has certainly certainly justified that initial expense. It put St. Matthias on the map. It's drawn really good musicians through the years. CBC came and started recording until the fire station was built around the corner. They're less willing to tape here now because for unexpected noise. I, in fact, played my first CBC recital on this instrument in 1982. That was Organist and Recital. That was a series that had been going on for decades. By the end of the 80s, CBC had cut that program. That was the beginning of the cuts, the beginning of the support of young artists in Canada, young composers. And so this instrument was featured on CBC, just not by me, I'm sure other people. I'm sure Bernard Lacazette played. So the church would have got CBC rental rates from that. People from far and wide came to be inspired by this instrument. The cathedral followed us, St. Matthias, in 1980 with their instrument at the back. And even I, as a university student back then, said, do it right or don't do it. And again, there was politics involved, and the installation was compromised by the size of the jubé, the gallery. So the organ is not successful. It doesn't balance because the pedal stops, the pedal towers were not able to be forward. There's not enough space. And the choir has struggled because there's not enough room to really operate properly. So it wasn't done properly, which is really regrettable. And then St. John the Evangelist followed in 1984. They moved their front organ and built a gallery at the back, and they have a lovely instrument there. So we were an influence and talk of the city. Mm-hmm. And look at here we are 50 years later, attracting a virtuosic young 35-year-old American organist who I expect will take this instrument onto the highway. Fasten your seatbelts.